Dear valuable students of Alanya Hamdullah Pasha University, welcome to this course with the title of History of Architecture 3. My name is Dr. Hurash Ahmadnia. As you may know, I'm going to be with you during this semester, which has been divided in 15 weeks, and each week we will be with each other for approximately 3 hours to see how, let's say, modern architecture have been developed, how postmodernism emerged, and after that, how contemporary architecture, let's say, dealing with somehow the ideologies that have been developed with modern architecture. To do that, as you may know, and in your previous courses of History of Architecture 1 and 2, you have learned about the ideologies which have been developed since the prehistoric era to Greek, Roman, early Christian, Byzantine, Romanesque, and Gothic architecture. And then you have learned about Baroque architecture, Rococo architecture, neoclassical architecture, which was somehow after Renaissance architecture appeared. This classical architecture. Previously, you have learned about this architectural style. It is, let's say, philosophy and architectural characteristics. But now in this course, we are going to work with each other on the origins of modern architecture, its indicators and classifications with each other, why modern architecture appeared, and what are the difference between modern architecture and modernism, and what it is, how we can find its origins from Industrial Revolution. We will try to somehow work with each other to understand these kind of keywords. For example, in Renaissance, we have to have feedback on Renaissance to take out some indicators of keywords from Renaissance, such as existentialism, and that sort of keywords we need in Renaissance to understand how Renaissance and their ideology and self-confidentiality that gives to the peoples leads to Industrial Revolution, and how, because they thought that they can. That's why, if you know Kant's ideology, also he developed the idea on that time that I'm thinking, therefore I am. So that's why if you look at these keywords and put each other, these are the factors leads to have lots of inventions in Industrial Revolution, such as steam engine, weaving machine, somehow cast iron, cement, and lots of inventions that we have on that time. That's so-called Industrial Revolution, which started from 1750 to 1900. If you look at this, let's say, period, we have actually lots, 4 different Industrial Revolution up until now, but our main aim in this course is the first Industrial Revolution, which emerged starting from 1750. So we'll try to somehow have feedback to Industrial Revolution before starting to talk about the modernism, modernity, and modern architecture. So because the origins of modernity is in Industrial Revolution, that's why we need to somehow focus on it. How, let's say, Industrial Revolution, Crystal Palace, which have been, let's say, built in 1850, which has been designed in 1850 by Joseph Paxton, became the, let's say, symbol of industrial revolution together with the Eiffel Tower, which have been built in 1887. So these are the key factors. We need to find out industrial revolution, why it is emerged, the factors that we need somehow to deal with industrial revolution, such as standardization and somehow mass production were the main keywords that industrial revolution, which help us to somehow help us to come to the idea of modernism. We will discuss about these factors. The main reference book that we are going to teach based on that is the book which have been written with the name of Stylistic Approach in Contemporary Architecture, which has been published by an Alanya municipality, written by me and Dr. Roxane Rahbarian. Yes, this is the main reference, which all the books, all the, let's say, project lecture that we are going to have will be based on that. So we are going to look at modern architecture or history of architecture tree as a stylistic approach. The reason that we are going to have a stylistic approach is that somehow, if you look at this period starting from Industrial Revolution, each period somehow it took some 15-16 years of let's say development, emerging and somehow changing to another architectural style. So that's why each period has its own architectural characteristics that we can easily somehow name one architectural style, because each architectural style have been developed based, if you look at its background, have been developed by some famous philosophers, and it has its own architectural characteristics. That's why the best approach to this course is stylistic approach. It will be stylistic approach. In this regard, we will do accordingly. We will look at modern architecture. We will divide modern architecture starting from post-industrial industrial revolution to three main parts: early modernism, which so-called functionalism approaches. We will discuss about its characteristic, ideology, and then we will go to mid-modernism and late modernism. We will discuss about these factors and characteristics. We will talk about early modernism in such a way that to understand, let's say, functionalism, which is the somehow beginning of the modernism, to understand its own ideologies, why functionalism became the, let's say, main factor for, let's say, modernism. We will talk about rationalism, and we will talk about formalism. So here I need to highlight formalism, that there will be lots of architectural style that we are going to discuss in this semester will be, let's say, somehow embedded in this classification of formalism. Then we will have which might be early or mid-modernism. Then we will have somehow feedback to late modernism. We will have observation and exploration on the idea of late modernism. We will talk about international style of architecture. Then we'll talk about organic architecture, brutalism, and minimalism. Then we will talk about somehow Puerto Rico residential buildings which have been destroyed, and it was named as Charles Jenks in his book Architecture of the Jumping Universe as the death of the most modernism, and we can see that after that postmodernism emerged. So we will have by this way a little bit quick look to the modernism, how it is let's say developed. We will talk about some famous architectures of let's say modernism, which was let's say started from Le Corbusier as the father of modernism. Let's say Frank Gehry, as you may know, organic architecture, in order to create the harmony of architecture, harmony with the nature. He was the one who developed this, let's say, brought this philosophy to architecture in order to create a let's say harmony between nature and the building. Then we will, so these are the factors that we will talk in detail about modernism, and then we will start to have postmodernism to see what are the difference between modernism and postmodernism. As you may know, in modernism we have been saying that let's say less is more, because they are not going to focus much more on details. But in postmodernism again they are trying to add detail to the building. So somehow contextualism came back to postmodernism, because in that period of time, which we so-called in this lecture as modernism, between pre-modernism and after modernism, is a gap that we couldn't manage to design based on the context. So contextualism, referring to the history and background, looking to the lesser details, also again came back to architecture by the project that Robert Venture designed for his mother. So we will talk about postmodern architects such as Philip Johnson, Michael Graves, Robert Venturi, Charles Jenks, and Robert Strand. So these are the famous architects. We will talk. Of the postmodernists. We will try to understand how they brought this philosophy to their project. What are the main aim and objective and design factors of their projects. We will go to their one by one, per each famous architects to their famous projects with each other. We will go in detail to understand how they developed how they act in the postmodernism era, and how they get help from modernism, because there are some let's say architects we can see that in both periods they have been working, so that's why we have to again distinguish, such as Philip Johnson, which has been worked at the same time in modernism, and he came into the postmodernism having designed AT&T buildings by putting some let's say gabled roof on it to name it as postmodern building. So there are some famous architects having designing in two periods of let's say architectural style, which is so-called in this course as modernism and postmodernism. We will go in detail about these let's say architects, their ideological characteristics, and after that let's say postmodernism, as you know that we have high-tech at the same time as an architectural style, we will look at it. To see how Pompidou Center have been designed, have been named as, let's say, as architectural style in 1960s onward, and it is, let's say, how it has been emerged, how Renzo Piano also developed this idea, their contribution to the their contribution in this era will be discussed in details. We'll look at Richard Rogers, Norman Foster's, and Michael Hopkins, let's say, projects which are mostly working on high tech, to see how the technology exposed itself to, let's say, expose itself. So formalism, this is a kind of also formalistic approach to architectural design, so high tech. And then we look at ecotech, how somehow ecological design, which is the main concern of even nowadays, have been somehow covered the high technologies, how they interact with each other, support each other, ecological approaches, factors and indicators came to the help of high tech to have its own architectural style, which is so-called in this course as ecotech, will be discussed in details. Then somehow we will go apart from high tech with to discuss about deconstructivism, how in the philosophy, deconstructivism in the literature, philosopher Jacques Derrida developed this idea, how Bernard Tschumi take this idea from philosophy and developed it for the first time as an architecture in Parc de la Villette. So we will discuss about it. Peter Eiserman, even Daniel Libeskind, Frank Gehry, Zaha Hadid are the most famous architects which have been working in this, let's say, architectural style, which is emerged starting from 1967 up until now. So we will discuss about this deconstructivism, and as an architectural style, we will go through it during this semester. At the same time, we will, after deconstructivism, we will somehow go in detail to another architectural style with the name of folding architecture. How we will discuss with each other how layering important became to be important, how somehow in deconstructivism, somehow the layering and priority, which was classification of each and specific projects, have been, let's say, collapsed and folding in such a way that to say that all the layer and surface of the building have equal values. So we will discuss about this. That's again the philosophy of folding and some famous buildings of folding architecture. And then we will have another architectural style, which mostly start from 1990, about bulb architecture. You may see that some bulb architecture or blob texture are the main keywords that they are mentioning here. We will discuss about it, and finally we will close this semester by let's say most contemporary let's say approach to architecture, which we in this the book of stylistic approach to contemporary architecture. We named it the computational architecture, which was our contribution, let's say, to academia by putting this chapter as a, let's say, as a book, which so-called computational architecture. We will discuss about in computational architecture about topological architecture, animated architecture, or parametric design and metamorphic architecture. These are the main keywords that nowadays mostly discussed by the famous architects to be able to take this kind of advantage of computers and the computational factors that developed by the computers supports architects in contemporary era. We will discuss about this architectural style in this semester. Of course, we will have some midterms, one midterm and one final exam, and at the same time we will try to have in each and at the beginning of each and every sessions a quiz, a short quiz, to be able to understand that you completely comprehend the objective of the lecture. So the quiz will be about a previous lecture that you have had each and every at the end of each and every session. I will try to put the PowerPoint presentation and a video of each session on LMS system, so you will be able to let's say go through them easily, repeated, and if you have any question after the quiz, we will have some discussion with the student, with you, to somehow check with each other if you have any question in this regard. So we will go in deep to this lecture. So we will be able to somehow communicate with each other in this lecture. So let's start the semester, and I wish you the best. Good luck in this semester.